All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating idea, one that comes from the work of researcher Kevin L. Brown. It tackles one of the biggest questions in physics. What if the empty space all around us isn't empty at all? What if it's hiding a vast, untapped energy source? Let's get into it. So first, just think about this question for a second. When you picture a perfect vacuum, what comes to mind? Probably nothing, right? Just absolute emptiness? Well, as it turns out, modern physics has a very different story to tell. You see, in the strange world of quantum mechanics, empty space is actually this boiling, bubbling sea of energy. It's called zero-point energy. It's the baseline energy that's just there, even if you could cool something down to absolute zero, the coldest possible temperature. And the amount of this energy is just staggering. Some calculations suggest the energy packed into a single coffee cup is enough to boil every ocean on Earth. So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the proof that this energy even exists. Then, we'll talk about why physics says it's basically locked away. After that, we'll explore a new idea for how to get to it, the framework behind that idea, and most importantly, how we could actually test it to see if it's for real. Okay, so how do we know this isn't all just some weird mathematical theory? How do we know this energy is actually out there? Well, it's because we can actually see what it does. We have real, measurable effects. The most famous one is probably the Casimir effect. If you put two metal plates super close together in a vacuum, they literally get pushed toward each other by this energy. We also see it in things like the Lamb shift in hydrogen atoms, and even in what's called spontaneous emission. The point is, this isn't just a theory. It's a real force that's pushing and pulling on our world all the time. So you're probably thinking what I'm thinking. If there's this incredible ocean of energy all around us, why aren't we using it to power everything? And that brings us to the big problem, what you might call physics locked door. You see, the standard scientific view is pretty straightforward. The vacuum is the absolute lowest energy state there is. It's the ground floor. You can't get energy out of it for the same reason you can't have a waterfall on a perfectly flat lake. For energy to do work, it has to flow from high to low. And there's nowhere lower to go. It's locked up. But what if we're thinking about the problem all wrong? What if, instead of trying to drain this energy, we could find a different way in? This is where a new hypothesis really changes the game. And this right here is the big shift in perspective. The standard idea is to try and drain the vacuum, which everyone agrees is impossible. But this new hypothesis, which comes from a framework called Triune Harmonic Dynamics, or THD, asks something else entirely. What if you don't have to drain it? What if you could just create a slope, an energy gradient, make the energy level a little lower in one spot and just let it flow downhill naturally? So how would you even begin to do that? Well, this idea is based on a model called the Triune Harmonic Dynamics framework, THD for short. It gives us a new way to look at how we might interact with the vacuum itself. The THD model basically sees any system as having three interconnected parts. You've got the dense core, that's the physical stuff, like a metal box or a cavity. Then there's the neutral space, which is the quantum vacuum itself, both inside and outside the box. And finally, you have the fast perimeter. That's electromagnetic energy, like radio waves, interacting at the boundary. The whole idea is that these three things are always influencing each other in a dynamic way. And this is the absolute key takeaway. This is not about creating energy out of thin air. That's impossible. This is about redistributing energy that's already there. The idea is to use resonance, hitting that boundary with just the right electromagnetic frequency to change the vacuum structure in a tiny local area. It's like creating a low-pressure spot, allowing the high-pressure energy all around it to flow in. It's redistribution, not creation. Now that's a really exciting concept. But for any idea to be actual science, it can't just be interesting, it has to be testable. You have to be able to prove it wrong. So let's get to the most critical part, the falsification test. So here's the hypothesis stated in scientific terms. Basically, it's saying that if you use the right resonant electromagnetic frequencies on a specific physical structure, you can actually change the energy density of the local vacuum. If you can do that, you create a measurable energy gradient that could, potentially, be harnessed to do work. So how would we know if this is just plain wrong? Well, the hypothesis is false if you run an experiment and get no extra energy out beyond what you put in. It's false if any extra energy you do measure can be easily explained by normal things like heat or stray radio waves. And most importantly, it's false if you run the experiment with the system resonating and get the exact same result as when it's not. These are clear, measurable goalposts.
This quote really sums it all up perfectly. The test is simple, at least in concept. You build the device, you run the experiment, and you carefully measure everything. If all the energy coming out can be accounted for by our current classical understanding of physics, well, the hypothesis is wrong. End of story. But if there's something extra, something that can't be explained away, then things get very, very interesting.
And that leaves us with this one final, huge question. We know the energy is there. The conventional wisdom says it's locked away forever. But this new hypothesis suggests that maybe, just maybe, we've been trying to open the door with the wrong key. Could it be that resonance is the key we've been looking for, the one that could finally unlock the most fundamental, most abundant energy source in the entire universe?